So tonight, in between the questions, we'll be talking about the basics. These are the questions that I get the most often. These are the ones from the new business owners. These are the questions that I probably get asked at least once a day, if not like a week. So these are the most popular questions. And if you think of any other besides these, again, put them in the comments, put them in chat, let me know, and we'll get to them. So before we get into the questions, just a little bit about me in case you didn't know. My name is Ryan Beals, and I am the owner of Ryan Beals CPA. I'm based in League City, Texas. I run a virtual firm, meaning that uh, there's no physical location as of now. But most of my clients are here in the League City area, which is in between Houston and Galveston. Um, I do have some clients that are in different states, but a good majority of them are here. I started this business a couple of years ago. I wanted to provide something different. A lot of times when I was preparing taxes, I felt like there wasn't a lot of thought put into it. I'd spend all this time learning the tax code and learning how to take advantage of it. But when it came to actually preparing the return, it was more like just it felt like you were just putting numbers down on the paper. There wasn't a lot of thought put into it. I describe it as like a painting by numbers. You're just taking the numbers from here and putting them over there. So I wanted to do something more. I wanted to get out and provide more of a service to get the tax planning side and be more than just a tax preparer. So this is the manifestation of that. So, first question, and this is probably the one that I get the most, like the absolute most. How do you pay yourself? And this really depends on how you're organized, but most are organized as like a single member limited liability company, or they're just a sole proprietor where there's no formal structure. And the way that you would pay yourself is that you would just take the money from your business bank account, which we'll talk about. That's another question. Transfer money from your business bank account to your personal bank account. The way that it's taxed is it doesn't matter if you leave the money there or if you take literally every penny out, you're going to be taxed the same. So in an LLC, sole proprietor, single member LLC, all you got to do is transfer the money from your personal or from your business bank account to your personal account. Things get a little bit hairy when you start talking about corporations, and if you're in an S corporation, which is what I see most often at I would say the most common structure. I don't see a lot of traditional corporations on the ground floor level, like mom and pop shops. But an S corporation, you would pay yourself in a variety of different ways. You have to pay yourself what's called a reasonable wage in that S corporation, meaning that you do actually have to pay yourself a salary and a payroll. So you'll get a W-2 at the end of the year. So that money is a deduction on your bank account and it's revenue for you personally. So that's one way. And then beyond that salary, you can take it out just like you would if it was an LLC. You just transfer the money over from your business bank account to your personal account. So that's the question I get the most often. How do you pay yourself? If you're not sure what you are, you're probably a sole proprietor. Probably safe to say that all you gotta do is transfer money from your business bank account to your personal account. So what's the next thing? Let's talk about banking. A lot of business owners ask if they need to have a bank account. And the answer is yes. You definitely do. I guess it's not technically mandatory, but if you don't, you're going to open up the door to a lot of troubles with the IRS and possibly others. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a business specific account. You could go to whatever bank you're with and just open a separate account or a separate, bank account within your account, I guess you would say. So it'd just be a different place to put your money. So like most people have a savings and a checking, you would have a third account that's another checking account, and you can run all of your expenses and income through that. So it doesn't necessarily, like I said, it doesn't have to be a business account, though. If you are structured like something formally like a limited liability company, a corporation, you need to have that bank account like that. But if you're a sole proprietor, don't really need to worry about it being a business specific account. The reason why you want to have a specific business account is because it opens up the door for liability and, for from a tax perspective. Let's say you get audited by the IRS and they ask you about all these things, right? Let's say that you really like to meet clients at Starbucks and you also like to go by Starbucks. You're a huge Starbucks fan. You probably go by there once, twice a day. Well, if everything was in your personal account, if you're running your business through your personal account and you had all these transactions from Starbucks, how are you going to justify that this is a business expense? This isn't a business expense. This isn't, right? It all just says Starbucks. So having a separate account that says business says, no, I used this account specifically because it was a business expense. And it's important to keep from the other way. Some business owners like to use their business account for personal expenses. That's also a bad idea for the same reason. Just because if you're using it for personal expenses, now it just brings into question like, well, is anything in here really a business expense? It makes audits harder and it makes it to where it's going to be much more difficult to defend yourself. Let's talk about taxes themselves. How are they calculated? So that depends on a few different things. So if you're in a limited liability company, an LLC, or you're in a sole proprietor, then your taxes are pretty easy to calculate. You take your revenue, that's your money coming in, and minus your expenses, that's money that you spend on things. The difference between your revenue and your expenses is called net income. Basically, that net income is put on your return, and that's what's being taxed. And notice I didn't say anything about withdrawing money. So as I said earlier, whether you take the money out or if you put the money in, if you withdraw every single penny or you don't take a penny out, that money is taxed the same. It's revenue minus expenses. And any distributions to yourself in a limited liability company or an LLC or a sole proprietor is not an expense. In an S corporation, it's a little bit different, and this also applies for partnerships. So partnerships can be a lot of different things, but normally it's two different people are business owners and they are not husband and wife. So in these situations, it's still the formula of revenue minus expenses, except for in the case of a LLC or sole proprietor, where everything is going to be on a Schedule C or a Schedule E on the one return. Everything's filed on your 1040. It'll be on a partnership return or on a S corporation return. These are separately filed returns, and it's basically the whole purpose of filing these returns is to take the revenue minus expenses and see your share of income and to put that information onto your personal return. So let's say that you made $100,000 of net income in your partnership and you have two 50-50 partners. 50% of that income is going to get put on your return and the other half is going to be put on your partner's return. The same goes for S corporations. A lot of business owners ask if they should be keeping track of their expenses on something like QuickBooks or Xero, and I always advise people to do that. I believe some of these start out as free. Like I believe there's a free version of QuickBooks online. I may be wrong, but it's still pretty affordable. $10 a month is probably one of the least expensive business expenses you have in your entire business. So it's a good investment to have a software that keeps track of your income and expenses like that. Specifically, should you go with QuickBooks or Xero or other ones, I've seen things like FreshBooks, and I think it was like Zoho or something like that. If you plan on doing it yourself, you can use whatever is more comfortable with you. Whatever is the most comfortable is the one I would go with. QuickBooks is probably the easiest. Maybe not as far as like intuitive itself, but so many people have used QuickBooks over the last, I don't know how many years, that they've been around since I was a kid, that they have developed this online library that makes it to where you could just Google a question and your answer should show up. And a lot of times it shows up as like a video that shows you how to fix it that way. So while QuickBooks may not be the most intuitive, it has the most expansive help library to where you can, if you have any kind of questions, you can go in and Google it and see if and get your answer that way. Things like Zero are probably pretty close. There are some things where you might not be able to find an answer right away. Some people say that Zero is more intuitive. They kind of started out as like the tech savvy user, but since then, QuickBooks has kind of caught up to them, and they're really just neck to neck now. But if you have a bookkeeper that insists on something, then probably go with that because you're not going to be in it anyways. And that brings up another thing. Should you have a bookkeeper? That is the first thing that I recommend that business owners look at even before taking on my services. One thing about my services that not a lot of other CPAs need is that if you don't have the baseline finances or the baseline financials to see how your income and expenses are doing throughout the year, you're not gonna. It's really difficult to give a great product from my end. So if they're keeping track of their books by themselves, that's awesome. They really need to make sure that they're keeping up with it. But if they're not, if they're the kind of business owner that's gonna do it all at the end, then you really need to consider having a bookkeeper. Bookkeepers at the very, very low end, you might be able to get someone for like $100. I doubt it, a month. Probably more realistically, like $200. Going all the way up to somewhere like 500 plus wouldn't be unrealistic to pay someone like 1,000 plus a month. Typically, someone that is on the lower end is going to just be putting in transactions. Probably not going to get a whole lot of interaction. Really just taking your bank feed and putting it in at the end of the month. They may be in it for maybe 30 minutes a day or 30 minutes a month or so, and keeping track of that way. And then moving up to the more expensive, you might get a few more, what I say, I don't know, it's like, say a person has a feature, but bookkeepers that charge more tend to have more of a knowledge with the accounting, and if you have a question, they're going to be able to answer it, and they're probably in it more often, so they spend a lot more time making sure they get it right. And a lot of times you can get what's called CFO services. So in the broad world of accounting, there's CPAs do a lot of different things. I do taxes. It's something that I spent my entire career as a CPA doing taxes, but others do audits. Some do, they're working on financials at their company, like bookkeeping and stuff. And some do the really high level strategic operations side of accounting. And that's what some bookkeepers do in the high level. So things like cash flow management, strategy as far as like budgeting and things like that. So beyond the taxes, that's what you get at some of the more expensive bookkeepers. So do you need a bookkeeper? I think you need a bookkeeper. I don't even know you, and I think you need a bookkeeper. Highly consider investing in your business. Make it to where if you don't know where you've been, how do you know where you're going? So definitely bookkeeper. Next question that I get is, should I get an EIN? So EINs are like a social security number with the IRS. Social security numbers come with their own baggage. Things like 1099s and W-2s. You technically can put your social as the payer. You can put your social, let's say that you're the employee, or you're the employer and you're paying someone like typically I see this in like household employees. If you're paying a maid to do work, you don't technically need an EIN. You can put your social on that W-2. The problem with that, putting your social as the payer on that W-2, is that you're now dishing out your social security number, and you have your social security number in all different places. And that gives me anxiety. If it doesn't give you anxiety, it should. An EIN takes the place of that social, and it gives you a different identification number. And you don't even really need to have a business to have a social security number. Like in that example with the household employee, you could have an EIN and have no formal business. It could be a DBA, doing business as. It's nothing formal like that. So if you are going to be sending out your social, if you're going to be doing a lot of extra returns, like in a business style, sending out W-2s, 1099s, things like that, highly recommend getting an EIN. So how do you get an EIN? So the classic way is that you can mail form, I forget what the number is, but you can mail it to the IRS and they will get to it when they get to it. I think they say there's like a 3 weeks waiting time right now to get an EIN. That is the way I don't recommend doing it. I almost don't even like mentioning that you can mail stuff to the IRS because they spend so much time and they're so backlogged that it takes a long time. So the best way of doing it is you can go to irs.gov, but on the IRS website, you can log in, or you can create a login, and you can apply for an EIN directly. This is how I did it. I got an EIN almost instantly. It may take a few days right now for the IRS to process it, but as compared to having to mail something and then wait and make sure they got it, possibly taking forever, getting it something in somewhere between instantly and a few days with the IRS, that is, as far as the IRS is concerned, that's lightning fast. So highly recommend using that if you can. It's free. There's no charge to get an EIN. And if you're going to get a business specific account that's owned by your business, you need to get an EIN first. It's going to be one of the first things that they ask for. When I went to my bank and got my business bank account, they asked for a few different things. They asked for pretty much a registration from the state, and then they asked for the EIN from the IRS. So if you have formally organized your business as an LLC, S corporation, whatever, you need to get yourself an EIN for that business as well. Do you need an LLC? Should you organize your business as a LLC, a limited liability company? There's more business structures than just an LLC, but this is the most common. It's the easiest thing to set up. I have a hard time with this question because I have to parse out the legal question from the tax question. As a CPA, I can't tell you legally why you should do an LLC. I can tell you that it's for liability reasons and to have separation of your personal assets from your business assets in case you get sued. But from a tax point, having an LLC, if it's just you and your business, if it's just you and your spouse, there's no tax benefit for that. It's just a legal benefit. So an LLC is just a legal structure, it's a legal vehicle. And when if you're the only owner or if it's just you and your spouse, you have what's called a single member LLC. As far as taxes are concerned, it's the same as if you were a unorganized sole proprietor, and it's the same as a single member LLC. Your business is going to be put on your 1040 on the Schedule C or Schedule E, depending on what you're doing. And as far as taxes go, again, there's not really a benefit. However, down the road, there could be a benefit because you can take that LLC and make an election like a S election, an S Corp election, and you can make that LLC be taxed as an S corporation. Again, one other thing is you can make that LLC into a partnership. So if it starts out as just you, and then down the line you want to add people as owners, people can buy shares of that company, and then now you got a partnership. And like I said before, you file a special return. So that could be it. An LLC specifically doesn't have a tax benefit until you make elections and there's owners besides yourself. Should you be an LLC? I think you should strongly look into getting an LLC just because, especially here in the state of Texas, it's very affordable to start an LLC. I think mine's a professional limited liability company. So a little bit special. I don't think I paid more than $600 for it. Maybe closer to $300. That was pretty much the only expense that I had in getting that going. So it's a little bit of an insurance to have that business into something that, if it grows into something and you want to sell it, it's easier to sell the LLC. So keep that in mind. If you're interested in hearing more about the service that I offer, you can go to ryanbillscpa.com and schedule a consultation. I don't charge for consultations, those initial consultations. A good number of my consultations are people that not sure where to start, and they say, hey, here's where I'm at, what do I do? And I try to have an honest conversation with them and make sure that even if you don't do business with me, you're set in the right direction. So if you're not sure, schedule a consultation. Let's have a conversation. If I can help you, wonderful. Even if that means not doing business with me, I would love to send you in the right direction and get you taken care of and help the small business community. Alrighty, guys. Again, my name is Ryan Beals, and I am the owner of Ryan Beals CPA. This is answered everyone's questions. I didn't get any questions, but that's okay. I went over the basics from what I've received in the past. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email, send me a DM. Be glad to help. I hope everyone has a happy holidays and Merry Christmas.